So this is 7.2 E as in echo, and we're just going to finish up here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. We've got example 5 having to do with transportation, and we end up with an equation. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over this because the book does a pretty good job at explaining things. But we get 3 equations here, and the oops, better probably write and not talk about something else at the same time, since that seems to cause me grief. Okay, so there's my volume. This is the formula for my weight. And this is the equation for my value. Okay, so there we go. Then if I were to write it in matrix form, I would get 25, 25, 150, so those are my x's, 22, 38, 180 for my y's, 30, 70, 300 for my z's, and 30,000 Okay, so there is my matrix. And the book used the Gauss-Jordan method in order to solve this, which again means that our diagonals are going to be 1, and these are going to turn into zeros, and these 3 will turn into zeros. Alright, so I'm just going to do a little bit here just to kind of get you moving and to just show you what you could run into. Alright, so again, the very first thing I'm going to do is make this 25 a 1. So I'm going to multiply everything by 1 over 25. So that gives me 1. 22 over 25. 30 over 25. Or let's just reduce it to 6/5. And then we've got 1200 here. Now what I want you to notice is the fractions. It's not a problem at all. You're not doing things wrong if you end up with fractions here. It could be that as you go you end up with a ton of fractions. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is multiply this. And again, this is locked because we have a 1 right here. But we're going to use that 1 to make this a 0. So we're going to multiply that 1 by a negative 25. And then when we add that to this row, we got a negative 25 plus 25 is 0. This times this, and then we have to add it to that 38. And in this case, we end up getting 16. And then again, we're multiplying this negative 25 times 6 over 5, which gives us negative 30, plus the 70 here gives us a 40, and then our last number ends up being 32,000. So we just keep plugging away. Now we're going to try to make this 16 a 1, and so we continue with the Gauss-Jordan elimination to figure this out. And one of the things that you'll find out here is that as you go, all of your bottom ones will end up again being 0, which means z can be any number here. But according to this particular problem, there are certain z's that it can be and certain z's that it cannot be. Okay, so let's pretend that you did the whole Gauss-Jordan elimination, and we got for our final answer here 1, 0, -1, -5, 60, 0, 1, 5 halves, and this is after you went through the whole thing, and then we've got 0, 0, 0, 0. Now the book calls it Gauss-Jordan elimination. I'm not seeing that because this is not a 0 and this is not a 0. So I'm just going to say that it's the echelon method. I don't know why they called it the Gauss-Jordan elimination method. But again, you can use your book or your calculator for this and get everything you need just using your calculator, or you can do it by hand. But what we find out here is, again, notice how we got this to be a 0. Okay, remember last time I said you've got to, if you get your z's all being an infinite number, then you have to get rid of this y, so that all you have are z's and z's. So you end up with, as your final equation, x equals -560 plus z, which is that one, and your y value is 2000 minus 5 halves, or 2.5 z, which is that right there. Okay, and then your z value, you have to figure out what that can be. Now we said that z could be anything, but that's not necessarily true, because as we plug numbers in here for z, well, first of all, what does z stand for? Z stands for value. So, a cost. So z has to be greater than 0. It cannot be negative. And then if you start putting numbers in here, you find out that if z is a number like 10, well, when we add it to -560, we get -550. And x represents volume, so volume can't be negative either. So not only does z have to be bigger than 0, it also has to be bigger than 560. Okay, so we know that. So we're kind of firming up a little bit more about what z can be. Now if you keep going and you look at this, as z gets bigger and bigger, when you multiply it by 2.5, it gets bigger and bigger. So 2000, if this number is bigger than 2000, when we subtract it from 2000, we're going to get a negative number there, and our weight can never be negative. So therefore, our z has to be bigger than 560, or it could be 560, I guess. The volume could be 0. So it has to be bigger or equal to 560, and it has to be smaller than or equal to 800 in order to keep my y value, which is my weight, a positive number. Okay, so that's what we end up with, is making sure you look at the equation and making sure that even though z can be any number, in order to make it work in this equation, it has to be a number between these two. Okay, so let's go into inconsistent systems, or where instead of 0 equals 0, we have a number equals 0, which is an incorrect statement, which means there's no solution. Okay, so here is example 6, and let's go ahead and put it as an augmented matrix. Let me turn this off. And again, just real quickly, what we're going to do here, we're going to get this to be a 1 by multiplying the whole thing by 1/5. And then we're going to make this into a 0, this into a 1, this into a 0, that into a 0, and that into a 1. And that's the idea. But when we do all of this, we end up with a matrix that looks like this. 1, 0, 8.4, 2348. And then the second row is 0, 1, -3, -560. And our last row is 0, 0, 0, -2, 2800. Okay, so this third row is what we're looking at. 0x plus 0y plus 0z equals -220,800. 0 does not equal that. So therefore, because the third equation is impossible, then the entire system has no solution. Okay? And again, you can put all this information just in your calculator and get your answer right there. So anyway, that is the end. Phew! 7.2. Gosh, videos, 5 videos later. So anyway, just a warning, 7.3 is probably going to be even longer, okay, as the book goes into some crazy stuff. So hopefully I explained this in a way that was beneficial to you and that you got it. If not, let me know.